I'm fixing to do another batch of raw canned chicken. I always start off with the canner. I'm doing my digital canner. It's the one I like to use right now. It's more convenient for me and my lifestyle that I use, that I do. So it's plugged up. And I've got the disher here washed out. I have it filled up to the fill line. Here's the fill line with warm water. If you start with warm water, just from the tap water, everything heats up quicker. So what you do, you get it plugged up, you push the arrow, you put in the time that you're going to do. I'm going to be canning pints, raw packed pints, which is 75 minutes. So go up to 75 minutes. Program that in. All right. Then you put in your jars. Oh, got my jars all filled up halfway with warm water. So now I put all the jars in here that's halfway full of warm water. And what's going to take place is that we're going to go put it through the sterilization process of the jars getting sterilized. It doesn't take that long to do. So put the lid on. I get the lid on. We get it where we're going to get it lined up. We twist it. This lined up here. Close this. Make sure it's all lined up right. And this will close when it's lined up. Must not be lined up, it's not closing. Okay, there we go. Now it's lined up. Close it up. And then we'll push the arrow. Okay, I've already inserted the jars. I did a little bit ahead of myself. That's fine. The jars have been inserted. Push the arrow again. Now it's going to show they're warming up. So these jars will be sterilizing. And once they get done sterilizing, then we'll open this up. We'll take the jars out a few at a time. Pour the water out, and I'll fill them up with the chicken meat. I'll be back in just a moment. Now while I'm waiting on the jars to sterilize and warm up, I'll show you my setup. Here's my vinegar with our paper towels to wipe the rims as I get the jars filled. The batch I did yesterday, I filled up with a little bit of water, but I only used chicken broth, which will give the chicken meat a little more flavor. So I'm going to have some with both, one with water, one with chicken broth, my batches. I have my lids in here, rings here. As I pour the water out of the sterilized jars, I'll pour the water into here and it heats these up a little bit. I have my funnel. I have chicken tenders, chicken breast meat all cut up in cubes, all ready to fill the jars. I have my lifters out of here. And I have a knife to remove all the air pockets. And over here, I'll show you the batch I did yesterday. Here's all the jars I did yesterday. I've got a marked chicken for August 24th. And here's all there. They all sealed. I took the rings off and got them all wiped down. For right now, I put the rings back on them. Because the way I store them, they'll be all right for a little while. So I got them all cleaned up and put the rings back on them, so they're okay. I won't have anything on top of them that's going to be messing up the seals or anything. So I've got 7 plain chicken with the water in them, which the chicken meat makes its own broth. So they'll be good. And then these will have a little more flavor with the chicken broth than these. So we'll get to filling these up in just a little bit. Okay, the beeper just went off on this thing. Saying for now it's time for us to fill the jars. So what I'll do is I'll take the lid off so we can fill the jars. I'll open it up. And we'll start taking some of these out. And we'll fill the jars. Don't forget, we're getting the first one out of there. And so I will pour the water over these. A couple jars. I'll get these filled. Okay, now, excuse me, because this is my chicken, my food, my kitchen. I use my hands. I'm not going to use all the, we're about using tongs and forks and whatever. So I'm going to use my hands for this. And pack it down. Try to get in there as much as I can. You want to leave an inch to an inch and a quarter head space, because you got to remember one thing. The chicken is going to produce its own broth in here. And so you need to leave a room for it to produce its own broth a little bit. And if you're going by canning books, they'll say you don't have to add water or broth to raw pack. But you can. Add just a little bit. Reason being is because a lot of times when you're canning raw chicken, raw pack, it won't produce enough broth to where the meat will be covered once the canning process is done, and the meat will be kind of dry on top, and I don't like that. A lot of people don't like that. So that's why a lot of people will add either a little bit of water or a little bit of broth, just enough to kind of know when it produces enough of its own broth. There'll be some liquid in there to where it's going to be covered up. All the meat's going to be covered up when it's done canning. So that leaves just enough room. You still check sure there's no any air bubbles. Enough room to where it will produce its own broth in there, and the meat will be covered up the rest of the way when it produces it. And make sure all the air bubbles are out. Now, I have my phone, not getting my phone messy, my wrist. What I'm going to do is get this tapped with some vinegar. Now, you wipe your rims very well. Make sure there's no chicken juices on your rims with vinegar. And turn it over to a fresh side. Make sure there's no chicken juice on your rims. And get your rings or your lids. Place your lids on there. Now what I'll do is I'll get a wash rag and a towel, and I will hold one hand on top, do one more little turn with my hand, and hold the bottom and turn another turn with my hand where I get one more twist tight, but not have it tight, but just finger tight, but I'll do one more little twist. And then I'll set it inside the canner. And the jars are not hot. Things are just warmed up a little bit. So, at least the ones you take out to can. Now the ones that are in here, for the warming up, sterilizing, a little bit, still a little bit warm. So I'll use the tongs for those to take out. And now that's full of water, I won't put any more water in there. I'll pour the rest of the water in the sink. And so now that you saw me fill 2 jars, and keep in mind too, when you can meat, it's easiest to do the meat with wide mouth. You can get more meat in there, and it's easier to get it packed out than it is with the regular mouth. So I'm going to pause this and finish this up. Okay, I didn't quite have enough meat like I thought I did to do all 7 jars. I had enough meat to do 5 pints of chicken. So what I did was I filled up the other jars full of water so that take up the space and so the jars won't rattle around and try to bust or break. And that's how you do that. So I'm going to put the lid on. Get it lined up. Twist it. And shut it. Do that. Then you come down here. After you've got all the jars filled, you push the arrow. And it shows heating up. So as it heats up, this is going to be going to get good and heated up to the temperature it needs to be. And when it starts venting, it will start venting and there'll be steam coming out here. And then when the pressure gets on, this thing will pop up. And when all that pops up, and it gets to a certain temperature, and it starts beeping and ready to can, it'll beep. That lets me know it's time to put this regulator on, where it says can. And so when that starts beeping, I'll put the regulator on. So right now I just have to wait for it to start beeping. And when it beeps, I'll put the regulator on, push can, and it will start canning for 75 minutes. Once it's done canning for 75 minutes, then it will go to the cool down time for an hour after that. And that's pretty much all you do. Wait when it gets done, when it cools down, and this goes down, you can take the regulator off, and then you can take the lid, open this up. I usually let it cool for about 5 or 10 minutes. After I take the lid off, then I'll take them out and put them on a towel. I'll show you the after effect when it's all done.